A few years ago, my wife and I got a letter from a woman claiming to be my wife's daughter, Laurel, who wanted to meet with her. She told me that she'd given up a child for adoption when she was young, so I was expecting that this might happen. What I didn't expect was that the truth was there was never any adoption. She just left the baby with the father and bailed. The worst thing about this is that when Laurel was a tween, she wrote my wife begging for help. Her response was to write her with the nastiest reply imaginable. I've since had the chance to read it, that basically blamed her for her problems and threatened her against contacting her again and ruining her family. I couldn't believe it. Not only has she been lying to me this whole time, but she's actively had contact and chose to abandon her daughter a second time while we were married. This has all been an emotional dumpster fire, but that's an issue of its own. We've been in contact and building a relationship for the last few years. So much therapy. So far, we've kept this all away from our kids. At this point, it's been a few years, and there's interest in having everyone meet. My wife and Laurel agreed to tell the kids and everyone else in the family that Laurel's a family friend. Absolutely not. I'm sick of the lying. What they call each other is their own deal, and I don't expect that to change. But I'm not lying anymore. I don't like lying to my kids as a policy, but lying to them about who's related to them and who isn't is dangerous. I only want them to meet if we can tell them the truth. Now I'm getting into it with my wife, Laurel, and my parents, the only outside people who know. They say I should go along with it, not for my wife's sake, but for Laurel's. I understand why she would want that, but I don't think I care anymore. The kids need to know. So I want to go against my wife and her daughter's wishes to tell my kids something neither of them is comfortable with that would alter both of their relationships with the kids forever. Edit. She is the mother of my kids. All but one are over 18, but they were still kids when this came out. I get you have kids with her, but she literally up and abandoned her kids twice and still wants to lie about it and cover it up with the family some more. You are not the idiot for refusing to lie. The fallout from lying will be far worse than telling the truth up front, and you'll be just as guilty as her in your kids' eyes for lying by omission. Your wife is a monster to string this poor girl along. Lying is not the answer. The truth always comes out. You shouldn't be taking on this lie with your wife. Exactly. Your kids are going to find out eventually. It will happen, no matter how hard your wife protects her lie. Just doing a DNA test from Ancestry will uncover it. A relative who knows can slip up. Does she want the kids to find out like that? They might hate her forever for it. This lie will cause an avalanche of issues, and your children deserve to know this person is their sister. Their sister also deserves to know her siblings as siblings, not as generic friends. Hasn't your wife damaged her enough with the abandonment? I can't imagine being the daughter who was treated this way. As for you, I could not stay with a person capable of this. She's been lying to you, and that's not forgivable to me. There's nothing to stop you from being honest with your own children. You don't have to keep the secret. What is your wife going to do? Divorce you? She would be doing you a favor. She isn't a good person. She rejected her own daughter twice. She had 30 years to correct this, and she didn't. She wanted to keep going. I was shocked that there was no mention of OP rethinking whether or not he should stay married to her, because I would have been out when that letter was revealed. I'm gobsmacked that the story kept going after that. I can't imagine a mother treating her child that way. What a darn monster OP's wife is. I can't imagine how OP can stand staying married to her. I would chew her butt out for treating her own daughter this way. If it were me, then she would 1. Apologize to the kid and beg her to forgive her for being this horrible. 2. Acknowledge her as our daughter, much less hers. 3. Give her a place to be a normal kid and do the best we can for her. And if she didn't do all 3, then I'd file for divorce and try my best to get full custody of the kids. No one needs a toxic person in their lives. My daughter got married about a year ago. She spent about $20K on her wedding. It was a wonderful experience for her, but for all the guests, it really sucked. All the money went to things the couple would enjoy. The reason it sucked for the guest was due to multiple factors. The biggest one were the guests had to buy food and drinks and had no entertainment. So people get to the wedding and the ceremony happens. Then they get put into another room after a long day of driving out and don't get any food or drink. Most of them were forced to buy overpriced food since they were starving. They didn't even get any cake since the cake was fake. Overall, it was not a good guest experience. Afterward, it was negatively talked about, and people were actually quite mad about it. My other daughter's getting married and asked for my help. Her sister offered to help, and my other daughter made it clear that she didn't want her wedding to be anything like hers. My daughter asked what she meant by that, and I was honest with her. Her wedding wasn't a good experience for guests, and it was a running joke at this point with family and friends. I thought she already knew, since a lot of people hated her wedding. This caused an argument, and she called me an idiot in the end. I pointed out all the issues I had with her wedding, and she thought I was being cruel. Edit. The money basically went to her dress, venue, and photos. I know her dress was $6K. The venue was pricey, and she didn't get the food package. Not the idiot. How does someone spend $20K on a wedding and not feed anyone? You totally could have been a touch gentler, but also, OMG, I can't even imagine. A fake cake? Do you hate your guest? Your married daughter appears to possess 0% empathy, logical thinking, and generosity. How do you raise a human like this? Some people are so self-focused that they either can't or won't see the situation through other people's eyes. Your daughter and her husband sound like this because it should have been evident that they were creating a very poor experience for their guest. Your daughter's now being brought into reality about her wedding. She'll go kicking and screaming because to admit this reality is to acknowledge that she's to blame for it and should have seen it coming. But people like her need a good wake-up call, and this is hers. Hopefully, this is the only wake-up call she'll need. However, people like her tend to fight reality tooth and nail. Kind of reminds me of a birthday party I was invited to a couple of years ago. The only food available was these tiny packs of peanuts you get on the airplane, and you had to buy them for €5. The birthday girl was a flight attendant who stole them from the airplane. People still joke about that. It's time for her to grow up and realize that she's not the most important person in the world, and that she needs to start thinking of other people. I have a disability which makes me unable to work or study. I could hardly graduate high school, and college wasn't even an option, and I just couldn't have a job. Luckily, I was born into a very wealthy family and have a supportive dad. He gave me a simple job at one of his businesses and pays me $40K, which I believe is very generous because I basically do nothing. When I was 20, I got a girl pregnant. It was an accident. My dad was again very supportive. After my daughter was born, my dad allowed me to move out and live in one of his other houses. He hired a nanny and maids to help me care for my daughter. He also paid for every expense related to my daughter. He never actually gave me money for this, but whenever my daughter needs anything, I call my dad and he'll provide it. This has continued, and my daughter's a teen. My dad spoils her with everything she wants and needs. I've never spent a penny on her because my dad takes care of everything. Anyway, a few years ago, I met the love of my life. She has 2 kids, a teen and a young teen, from a previous relationship. We got married a few months ago and they moved in with us. The problem is that my kid and hers have very different lifestyles because my dad pays for my daughter's luxury lifestyle while I can't afford the same for my stepkids. A few weeks ago, my wife decided to confront my dad about the favoritism and how differently he treats the kids and asked him to start treating them all equally. My dad got really angry and started yelling at her, saying things like, "How dare you say that when you're living rent-free at my house and driving my car, and I support one of your kids, and now you expect me to pay for your other kids?" I apologized to my dad, and told him that I appreciate everything he's done for my daughter and me, and that I don't expect anything else from him. When we left, my wife started crying, saying I should have backed her up because this is so unfair to her kids. She called me an idiot. This woman seems to have thought she was marrying into a wealthy life. You are not the idiot. She married you knowing this arrangement. She lives with you on his property, etc., and then she just ambushes your dad in front of you without talking to you? If I have that right, she's very much an idiot. I can sympathize that her kids aren't getting the same stuff. She's seeing her kids get less, and that's not going to feel good. But that should have been discussed way before marriage. Whether or not he told her, she has no right to get mad at a grandparent for not spending money on a step-grandchild. I would say everyone's the idiot here. If she married him expecting to hit the jackpot, it's on her too. Also, OP, I wouldn't have married a woman who has 2 kids if you can't even support yourself. It's very irresponsible on your part. I hope you've discussed this with your wife before getting married, and she knew that caring for her kids would still be fully on her. I get it. She's the love of your life. But marriage is not just about that, especially if there are stepkids in the picture. I hate to break it to you, but I think you've been taken for a fool. It sounds like your wife saw dollar signs flashing in front of her eyes that she mistook for love. It's crazy to be married for a few months and then rip into your new father-in-law about how he should be funding her children. She's now getting free rent, and that should drastically help her fund her children. I hope you had a good prenup, because this woman has dollar signs in her eyes. He doesn't need a good prenup. OP doesn't have anything. If OP's dad is as savvy as he seems, nothing's in OP's name, and the only thing he has is that $40K a year. OP, I sympathize with what your wife must feel. Poor gold digger. She only married you for the money, thinking she would live a lavish life. I graduated from college this past weekend, as did my girlfriend. A little backstory. We've only been dating for about 6 months, but she's about 12 weeks pregnant. Spare me the lecture about it because it's not perfect. I know we were dumb for not doubling up on the method. Her family is old money rich. I'm talking private jets on vacation and everything associated with that. Both her parents are relatively high profile in their community as well. They are very, very heavily trying to get us to get married so their grandchild won't be illegitimate. They took us out for graduation this weekend and made all of this very clear. For a little bit, I was receptive to the idea. I mean, I never imagined getting married this young, but I also never thought I'd have a kid without being married. So I get where they're coming from. I told her dad I'd be open to it, but I need time. He said, great, he'll reach out to the family lawyer and start making arrangements. I asked why we needed a lawyer, and he brought up the prenup. A prenup had never been discussed prior to this, and it makes me a little uneasy. I told my girlfriend it made me uncomfortable, and she's trying to assure me that it's just standard since they have so much wealth, and it's just what everyone in their community does. She told me they'd make it as fair as can be to me. But the thing is, I can't hire my own lawyer, and I don't know if I trust whoever they hired to represent me. So I told him that I'd marry his daughter if it's that important, but I'm passing on the prenup. This has not gone well. He accused me of using his daughter for financial gain and trying to exploit them. He then accused me of purposely knocking her up. I regret it, but I was taken aback. So I was honest in telling him she initiated every step in the relationship, including telling me not to use protection. He didn't like this, LOL. I just don't want to jump into something so lopsided. I'm willing to give marriage a shot, but only if it's a normal, old-fashioned marriage. Otherwise, I have no qualms with not being married. I really don't believe in the illegitimate label. My ideal would be to continue dating for at least another year before getting engaged, but they don't want that because of appearances. Am I the idiot for standing my ground here? You essentially have 3 options. Get married and sign a prenup without a lawyer. Tell them you'll marry once you find your own lawyer and agree upon said prenup. You can protect your future self just as much as they are. or don't get married. I personally think you shouldn't get married. You make it sound like a fun experiment. It's not, dude, and they cannot force you to marry her. If they have screw you money, they can make his life an absolute nightmare because he won't marry her, and they're angry about it. The icing on the cake is OP doesn't even say he loves her. Rushing into marriage without love almost guarantees they won't make it. Even if they were crazy in love, it would be a battle. Everyone's the idiot here. They have valid reasons to want a prenup. You have valid concerns about whether it would really be a fair one, given that you can't afford an attorney yourself. It's common for the person wanting the prenup to offer to pay for an attorney of your choosing to represent your interest and ensure the agreement is fair. Everyone's being an idiot by pushing for or being ready to make a difficult situation worse by adding an unwanted marriage to an unplanned baby. They shouldn't even be getting married, period. Everyone truly sucks because statistically, OP and girlfriend aren't gonna make it. They barely know each other, don't even have established careers, and are still fairly young. Not to mention how hard raising a child is, even in relationships where they're rock solid. Everyone's an idiot here. Hooray, LOL. I, 38 female, am married to my husband, 42. Back when I was 16, I gave birth to my daughter, Mary, but we're okay now anyway. I started a business in my early 20s, and now I'm considerably wealthy. My husband has a daughter, Jane, who's only 1 year older than Mary. We got married 2 years ago, and one of our main aims with this marriage was to have a nice company, as we both had almost the same experience, as his ex left him with Jane, just like my ex left me with Mary. However, I'm objectively wealthier than my husband. He's not poor. I just make more money, and finances have never been a main topic to us both, thankfully. Now, Mary works in a certain institution, makes her own money, and pays her own bills. But I also like to spoil her with money and luxury, and we travel a lot together. Sometimes I give her money to travel alone. She's fine on her own financially, but I always give her money. Also, Mary has a boyfriend. He's somewhat well off and always pays for their dates. So Mary wanted to surprise him on his birthday, but her plans were kind of above budget, so I paid the rest. Everything was fine until Jane called me, saying she wanted me to give her $2,000 so that she and her friends could travel for a bit of a vacation. I told her $2,000 for a vacation is a lot. I told her I could help her with some, but then she brought up everything I get and paid for Mary and never her. I told her because Mary has no one but me, as my husband doesn't contribute anything to Mary, so obviously I'll direct my efforts to her, and she also works. She doesn't just depend on me. Let's just say that phone call wasn't the nicest. I know the whole perception that if you marry someone with kids, then they're your kids too. Sure, Jane's not a kid. She was 21 when I got married to her father, so that's why it was never logical for me to become her mother, just like she never tried to become my daughter, just like my husband never tried to be Mary's father. This family started with all adults, and I never tried to separate Jane and her father or get between them. It was not that I had a problem with giving Jane money in general. It was her entitlement to demand it. Not the idiot. Jane's too old to behave this way. She must have never heard the expression, "Don't count someone else's money." It was terrible judgment for her to have asked for money. That was compounded when she doubled down to explain why you were in the wrong for not giving it. No matter who benefits, you didn't owe her any justifications for your financial decisions. You teach people how to treat you. Yeah, OP, you're the new piggy bank. Just out of curiosity, how did Jane learn that you're giving Mary money, and roughly how much? In the absence of any other info, I think your husband's saying things to Jane and wanting you to cheerfully accept being the piggy bank. Your reasoning was perfectly valid, and if you want to be gracious, you can explain to Jane how her entitled attitude has resulted in her not getting any money.